On this episode of Locked On Angels, what does the Halos bullpen look like currently? And will that be the pen that starts the season? And will it be the pen that carries them through the season? We got a lot to talk about. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John. And this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcast, including Apple Podcast, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you'd like to get back to the Super Halo Bros for all the Super Halo content, here's some things that you can do. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed already, please subscribe and become a Locked On Everydayer. And whether you're watching or listening, come over to YouTube and leave a comment. It's one of the best ways to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation. And this episode of Locked On Angels is brought to you by our friends at Gametime. You can download their app, create an account, and use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase.
Thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Hey, we're getting ready for our fourth full-time season here as the hosts of Locked On Angels, as the Halos get ready to play some baseball in 2025. We're here 3 days a week. This week, we did a Monday show, a Wednesday show. We got a special treat on Friday's show. And then we're back to 5 days a week starting Monday. So look forward to that. Talking Angels baseball every single weekday with you for about 30 minutes each time. On today's show, who's in the Angels bullpen? Who should they add? And who are the options that they could go to? Mike, let's start with the guys on the roster right now.
Yeah, let's start with the 8 guys that are on the roster, starting with left-handed pitcher Brock Burke. John, he was selected off of waivers in August last season, 2024, from the Texas Rangers. John, with the Rangers, 13 games, 9.22 ERA, had a 6.09 FIP, and a 44 ERA+. Then he comes to the Angels in 21 games, 3.54 ERA, a 2.38 FIP, and a 1.20 ERA+. Now, you said something to me off the air about Brock Burke and the Angels coaches and the narrative that's always around Angels pitching, mainly just around the Angels organization. They can't develop anybody. Yeah. I want you to share that with our everydayers, because I think it's a pretty smart take.
Well, I think it just comes to the fact that you look at where development has been, and it's not been great, right? And then they get to the majors, and it's not been great there either. You have Matt Wise as the pitching coach. You had Jeremy Reed as the hitting coach for a long time. Didn't ever really see anybody taking any steps forward. Then I saw a lot of comments in our YouTube section on Monday talking about Ron Washington for some reason, like they need to retire him. He shouldn't be the manager. And I'm like, guys, everybody took a step forward last year. Everybody improved last year. Joe Adell's defense improved. He was one of the best right fielders in all of baseball. And I think about the fact that Ben Joyce added the splinker, and that changed who he was as a pitcher. And then you have somebody like Brock Burke, who, again, coming over from Texas, a 9.22 ERA in 13 games, coming over from Texas to the Angels and having a 1.20 ERA plus a 2.38 FIP. That means that he's in control of a lot of things. Somebody somewhere helped him improve. Yeah. Somebody somewhere helped him develop. Now, I know we see somebody like Reed Detmers. Obviously, the struggles are there. You see somebody like Patrick Sandoval, who could never really get out of his head, and they've moved on from him. They've moved on from Griffin Canning. They got what they got from Griffin Canning, right? And now you've got some guys behind them, the pitching depth, that suggests that there's some good arms and good talent coming up. Some of them have come from other minor league systems like the Red Sox and the Cardinals, which is a great thing. And then you have the guys that the Angels have drafted who are still working on improving things. I have a lot more confidence in the coaching staff and their ability to develop than I have pretty much ever, right? Like since the last time they went to the playoffs, right? And I bring all of this up because the narrative around the team has been, and rightfully so, that they can't develop. I think that's starting to change. And so that's why I'm not quick to ditch Ron Washington, ditch Barry Enright. And just so everybody remembers, Ron Washington's philosophy doesn't just end with a major league club. It extends down through the ranks. And that is a big talking point that maybe got glossed over last offseason when he came on to be the manager. But Ron wanted to see a certain element of coaching and development take place all the way down, and he's got a vision for that. And so I just think that we need to throw that talk out the window, because Brock Burke, perfect example of somebody who came over to the Angels and got better. I think the same thing can happen with Kyle Hendricks, Mike. Apparently they have identified something that he was doing wrong with the Cubs. And so I think that he's in for a much better season than he had last year.
Another guy that improved, and we talked about him on Monday, is Ben Joyce. He's the second of the 8 guys that are on the roster right now for the bullpen. Just as a reminder, he adds the splinker and then all of a sudden goes 31 2/3 innings pitched in 28 games and has a 0.85 ERA. The big question, Johnny, is he ready to pitch back-to-back games as the closer? First time he pitched back-to-back games last year was in June on the 24th and the 25th, a total of 1 2/3 innings pitched. Gave up just 1 hit, 2 walks, 2 Ks. He threw 31 pitches, no runs. So that seems pretty manageable. Second time was July 12 and 13. 2 innings pitched, had a hit by pitch, 4 Ks, 34 pitches, didn't give up any runs. Again, another good back-to-back outing. And then the third time was in August of 2024, 8th and 9th. 1 total inning, 2 hits, 1 run, 1 walk, and 2 Ks. He pitched through 25 pitches. The second game, the reason why it's really like small when it comes to the innings pitched and when it comes to hits and things like that, the second game that he pitched, he came in, threw a couple of pitches, and then gave a walk-off to the Nationals. So he's shown that he can go in back-to-back games. However, that was only just 3 times last season. So he's going to have to do that a whole lot more if he's going to be expected to be the closer for the Angels this season.
Well, and the Angels are going to have to be in a position to win the game if he's going to close out games too. And so the offense has to be there as well. So, if they do their part, maybe he won't have to go back to back. But that's being pessimistic. I hope that he can handle those back-to-back days. Mike, Jose Quijada is back, of course. He went 2-2 with a 3.26 ERA, a 131 ERA plus, 31% better than the league average pitcher. 19 1/3 innings pitched, 17 walks, 24 Ks, a 430 fielding independent pitching. You can attribute that to the number of walks that he gave out. And you especially saw the negative effect of needing a secondary pitch toward the end of the season. Granted, he was coming back from Tommy John. He actually started out really well, and it was toward the end of the season where he just got way too predictable with the fastball. He's got to add something to that arsenal in order to be effective this season.
Yeah, because that slider wasn't deceiving anybody. I mean, you knew it was coming, and it was way out of the strike zone. It felt like the old Nintendo games where you press the up button or the up on the T square, right? And it would go, right? Like that's what it felt like. Now, Johnny, Garrett McDaniels is a left-handed pitcher that the Angels selected in the Rule 5 draft. He's only pitched 3 innings above high A. They did get him from the Dodgers, and because it was the Rule 5 draft, they have to keep him on the big league roster or they got to send him back. But John, there's a good narrative about Garrett McDaniels that's out there that he's somebody that if given the opportunity, he could really be great for a major league club. And why not with the Angels? The only question, the only tension is he is a left-handed pitcher, and they already have, Brock Burke, and then we're going to talk about somebody else in just a second that's a left-handed pitcher. And so that's the only question is you want to have too many lefties or too many righties in the bullpen. So he's somebody that the Angels do have some excitement about. Their high expectations for this guy, and again, has to stay on the roster because he is a Rule 5 pick.
Yeah, I'm excited. And if he was in the Angel system from the beginning, he probably would have been called up, right? And so even though he doesn't have the experience above a certain level, you got to give him a shot, and that's the position that they're in. Mike, a huge get for the Angels was Ryan Zephyr-John. He came over in the Luis Garcia to the Red Sox trade. 2.12 ERA in 12 games, 17 innings pitched, just 7 hits and 6 walks, 18 strikeouts, a 202 ERA plus, a 2.46 fielding independent pitching. Love this. 0.76 whip. That's 3/4 of a person getting on base for each inning that he throws. Mike, Red Sox could have just used him instead of trading for Luis Garcia. What are you doing, guys? I mean, thanks for the chip here, because
thanks for the 4 players.
Yeah, Zephyr-John's a stud. Now, speaking of non-studs, Jose Suarez, who's out of options, you can't send him down. probably going to be in that same position he was last year, where he's coming in during a blowout, or the Angels are up by 10 against the Colorado Rockies, because that's all they can ever do is be up 10 against the Rockies. But I say that because he is also a lefty. And like you said, it's getting a little lefty heavy in this bullpen as it stands. But there is a righty, Mike, Hans Kraus, right?
Yeah, Hans Kraus is the Brendan Donnelly potential
on
this roster.
You've been saying that a long time, too.
I like him a lot. 4-3, 2.84 ERA last season, 25 and a third innings pitched, 17 walks to 34 Ks, 149 ERA plus, and a 3.76 FIP. He was terrific in June. 4 games, 5 innings, no runs. Had a tough July, 4.63 ERA in 13 games, 11 and 2/3 innings pitched, 11 hits. So he gave up a lot of hits and a 1.54 whip. In August, he got better, 2.54 ERA in 7 games, 7 and a third innings pitched, and a 1.23 whip.
1.23. I love it. Finally, Mike, Jack Kohanowitz, we're still uncertain of where he's going to land. You and I have been partial to putting him in the rotation. When we talked to Jared and Nate of Talking Halos, they felt like Detmers would be in the rotation over Kohanowitz. But, there's a hunch out there. Different reports say that he could help out of the bullpen until the rotation spot opens. Because he's got that really powerful sinker and the fastball that needs a little bit of work. It's important for him to, really play with that pitch mix. And so maybe he might have the opportunity to do that out of the bullpen. I think, and maybe I'm just going to hammer this home, maybe I'll be on the forefront of pitch efficiency in baseball, because I am so sick of 12 strikeouts, 5 2/3 innings pitched.
Yeah.
Right. And that is not sustainable for anybody. And everybody's chasing the strikeout. They're chasing velo. They're chasing movement. I like a guy like Kohanowitz, who probably could have had, I'm going to say, 2 complete games last season if he hadn't gotten pulled when he got pulled. And I want to see complete games again. I want to see pitch efficiency. So you guys are going to get tired of me talking about pitch efficiency and how the Angels are going to make the playoffs this season. All right. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Coming up on the show, who should the Halos sign as a veteran arm for this bullpen? We've got 2 names, and we're going to share those coming up with you in just a minute.
Well, the big game is almost here, and there's no better way to make it even more exciting than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. They have over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded with PrizePicks. They make it fun and simple to get in on all of the action. Here's how it works. You pick more or less on at least 2-player projections, and if you're right, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. PrizePicks even has a free pick for the big game where Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw 1 yard to win. So you're going to want to take the over on that. He's going to throw a whole lot more than just 1 yard. You pair that with another correct pick and you can cash out. This week, I'm actually going to take more or over on Travis Kelce and his receiving yards, because I think he's going to go nuts on Sunday, even though I'm not a Chiefs fan. What I love most, though, is they have fast, safe withdrawals. When you win, you can get your cash right away in your account in as little as 15 minutes. And check out the promos tab with PrizePicks to tail any of the super sweet Millie winners that have a big game day lineup. And I sound like a really professional bettor here, don't I? If you tail a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can split that 1 million in promo funds. So exciting. So you should try all that out. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just check out PrizePicks. Download their app today. Use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB. You're going to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Again, promo code is LOCKEDONMLB. Get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Every day, as we're continuing our conversation on the Angels bullpen, who I think is in really great shape, to be honest with you, especially considering what they were able to do the rest of the way. You look at the overall numbers for the bullpen last year, a lot of the stank that comes from their season numbers came from that first 2-month stretch where, gosh, do you remember some of the guys that they were using and that they signed? And it was just like, you had Adam Simber, You had a couple of Gio Zuniga, right, was in there. And it was a lot of names, Mike, that came up during the offseason that we were all like, okay, well, I guess,
Right.
And that's the thing is you really can't make a judgment call on a bullpen piece until they're actually in there making their case if they're going to be good or not, because they're so volatile. Now, Luis Garcia was decent with us. Carlos Estevez obviously carried a lot of that weight, but after they were gone, the Angels bullpen still continued to do really well, even with somebody like Matt Moore not doing so great, didn't do as good as he did in 2023. Now, of the 8 that we just talked about, potentially in the bullpen who are on the 26-man roster, there are relievers with options who are not yet on the roster. And we have another 8. First of all is Kelvin Caceres. He did miss all of last year with an injury. The organization thinks that had he been healthy, he would have actually spent a considerable amount of time in the bullpen with the major league club. There's a non-roster pitcher, right-handed pitcher, Connor Brogdon, was a middle reliever for the Phillies from 2020 to 2024, pitched 1 game for the Dodgers last year in the majors. And so he's an interesting name that the Angels could go to if needed.
Yeah, Victor Medeiros is also a name, Johnny, right-handed pitcher. Always seems to be on the cusp. Like, oh, he's going to be so good, right? Spring training, he's so good. And then something happens, doesn't fully put it together. Last year was in 4 games and really struggled. He was one of those guys that you mentioned, came in the bullpen and just kind of fell apart, So
for me, I'm going to check this out right now because I'm thinking about, okay, he's coming out of the bullpen at the major league level 7 times over 2023 and 2024. But when I go to the minor league stuff, Mike, he's got more starts as a starter. Yeah, last year, 24 starts last year across high A, double A, and triple A. So I don't know. It maybe for Medeiros, it's a mentality thing of coming out of the bullpen versus actually starting a game. And, we spoke with Davis Daniel about like, what's your mentality when you start a game versus coming in out of the bullpen like he did in 2023. And he said it's way different because you know what you're expecting and you know what you need to be ready for. And when you're a bullpen piece, it's like, am I coming in today? So maybe the crutch there for Medeiros is the fact that he's a starter in the minors and he's not meant to be a bullpen piece in the majors. And maybe if they gave him a starting spot, like a spot start, he would do well. I don't know. Yeah. That's just a big question mark for me.
He looked good in spring training last year.
Yeah.
And I think we got really excited about him, but then you also have to like measure the level of competition, which by the way, John and I are going to pay attention to during spring training because that's fun because it kind of gives you an idea on how these guys are doing. You can check that out on baseballreference.com. John, left-handed pitcher Jack Dashwood was protected.
Is he in the Avengers?
So it should be. He was protected in the Rule 5 draft. So the Angels certainly have interest in keeping him around. And another pitcher that draws a lot of interest, and one of our everydayers has asked about him, and that is Sam Bachman. He was the number 9 overall pick in 2021, but he's never really been able to stay healthy. He's never really been able to put it together. The plan is currently to keep him as a starting pitcher, but depending on what happens in spring training, there might be a bullpen spot for him or in the future. And when he did pitch in the bullpen, when he was at the major league level a couple years ago, he was pretty good, right?
Now you got me looking up his numbers again out of the bullpen. So I'm going to look that up right now. But yeah, it's either he's going to be in the AAA rotation and, be in reserve for when they need him. But, out of the bullpen, let's see, he got 11 games out of the bullpen, 17 innings pitched, a 3.18 ERA and an ERA plus of 1.43. Mike, the whip's not great. It looks like he walked a lot of guys, but at the same time, I think that the bullpen's a perfect spot for him, especially because I think he has the tendency to ramp it up on the velo as well. So another right-handed pitcher that could come out of the bullpen. I would not be surprised if we see Sam Bachman out of the pen in 2025.
Yeah. There's a lefty named Victor Gonzalez. He's not on the roster currently. He's similar to all the other pitchers, all the other lefties, like Jose Quijada. There's been some comparisons to him. So he might be the odd man out. He might just be an extra arm for the Halos. And then, John, 2 guys that you and I have talked about often on this show, right-handed pitcher Michael Darrell Hicks, he's not on the roster, and right-handed pitcher Mason Erla, also not on the roster. These are names that we've talked about. They pitched really well with the Trash Pandas. In fact, Daryl Hicks was solid in his closing opportunities last season, 8 out of 10 for Rocket City. But with Salt Lake, numbers weren't as good, and he posted an ERA over 4. But that adjustment, kind of learning a new league, and
it's Salt Lake.
The hitters are really good there, right?
And the ball's also flying around the yard.
Yeah, there's an advantage there. Urla was a starter for 3 seasons with limited success, but then he was moved to the bullpen last year. Saw better numbers, John. 2.21 ERA with a 1.25 WHIP.
Yeah, good stuff from those two. I think Daryl Hicks could be somebody that they add to the roster when there's an injury or something out of necessity. Maybe we see him in a doubleheader where you get that extra spot and you can call somebody up and invite them to be part of the team. Under what circumstances will we see any of these guys this season, Mike? What do you think has to happen in order for us to see a Victor Medeiros or a Jack Dashwood or a Sam Bachman?
Oh, the guys that are going to be on this roster and in the bullpen or maybe the starting rotation is going to be Sam Bachman, and I think that's it. I don't think you're going to see anybody else. I think Sam Bachman is going to be the guy that will be the one that they move up and down, mainly for, I think, a bullpen arm. Although if they're going to try to make him a starter, I don't think they want to disrupt that too much. But I think he's at the point now, John, where you got to make a decision about him. You got to decide what you want to do with him, right? And so if he's a starter, then keep him as a starter. But if he's a bullpen guy, then keep him as a bullpen guy. They seem to be running with this starter mentality. So I think the same thing with him and Victor Medeiros. You just gotta have them do that instead of having them be a starter in the minor leagues. And then when you bring them up to the major league level, you're like, hey, could you go out in the 8th inning and figure that out? And so I think that the philosophy has to be, we're sticking with this. We're doing this. I mean, you mentioned this about Mike Trout on Monday's show. I think often what the Angels do with some of these young guys is it's still kind of, we're putting the puzzle piece together. We're building the plane while we fly it. I think that might be detrimental to some of these guys that they've drafted in the past. Give them a role. Here's what you're doing. Go and do it. Chase Silseth is another guy. Here, you're a starter. Be a starter and go be successful at that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think that when you consider somebody like Sam Bachman and the injury history, it almost makes sense for him to switch over to relief full time. And again, I don't know the status of his velo since he's come back. I would need to do a little bit of digging, but he has had in the past like some good velo that I think could play well at the back end of a bullpen. Imagine Sam Bachman in the 8th. You've got Ben Joyce in the 9th. All of this conversation also hinges on when Robert Stevenson comes back from injury, because obviously he will be on the roster. So that's going to move some pieces around. Mike, here's my thing. I know we all pile on Jose Suarez, but here's what I want to say. I think out of the bullpen, you give Suarez a very short leash, for a month for this season to start. And the reason I say that is because when he went down to AAA and came back at the end of the season and we all went, what are you doing? Why is he back?
Yeah.
The velo ticked up for Jose Suarez. And I almost wonder, is there something there to that where, for so many years we've been going, why do they keep going to this guy? And then 2022, he was actually a really decent starter when they called him up.
Yeah.
But for me, I think about Jose Suarez and I think about the fact that velo ticked up. I am pure curiosity, maybe morbid curiosity. I want to see how he does to start the season, because if there's something there, I understand why you keep him around, especially if he's doing the mop-up thing. But the reason I say short leash is because the minute you have Robert Stevenson come back, or the minute you got to make a move, because remember, 2023 was a year where nobody had any options left in the bullpen. You couldn't move guys up. You couldn't move guys down. All the guys that you went to, that's why they put Silseth and Bachman in the bullpen in 2023, because they had options. So if you needed a fresh arm, you could send them down and bring somebody up. They didn't have that for a lot of 2023 after that. And so you've got to get to guys who have the option to move between the majors and the minors. Suarez doesn't have that. So if you've got to make a change, then I think he needs to be the first to go. That's why I'm saying give him a short leash. He's got that new velo. See if it sticks. Let him do the mop-up thing for like a month, like I said. And then the minute you need to make a change, he's got to be the first one to go, because you need guys with options.
I love going to live events, whether it's sports or music, theater, comedy. One of my favorite memories I've shared on this show before was attending a Third Eye Blind concert last year with my wife and son. We got our tickets on Gametime, and they've made it even easier to grab tickets to your favorite events with a new feature, Gametime Picks. The feature filters out the fluff, easy for me to say, to only allow you to get your
That's not easy.
best.
That's not easy for anyone to say. The feature filters out the fluff. Let's go.
I did it, John. I did it. With Gametime Picks, you can find really amazing deals and even get to see your seat before you buy it, know what your view is going to look like. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets, use Gametime, download their app, create an account, use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account, use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
All right, so additional arms that are out there. I'm actually kind of blown away at some of the names that are out there. And I was, responding to comments on YouTube. And if you're listening on the audio side, come on over to today's show on YouTube, get in the comment section. Best way to interact with us there. And hit that subscribe button, by the way. We want 10K by opening day. Sorry for the plug. But the reason I bring it up is because we were talking about starting arms, right? And everybody was talking about Flaherty signing and, how it would have been a good fit for the Halos. At least it would have made the rotation better. I don't know about the cost and the opt-outs and all that stuff. But obviously, Flaherty would have made this rotation better. At this point, there's not really any starting arms out there. I do have some swing guys that I could suggest here, but at this point of the offseason, there's some really viable veteran arms out there that could come out of the bullpen and really be a benefit to this team, right, Mike?
Yeah. Some names like David Robertson, he's
Crazy.
out there, really well-known name. Kenley Jansen is out there. Craig Kimbrel is out there. Andrew Chafin is out there. Somebody that on this show a couple years ago, I think you wanted him, and somebody that the Angels could potentially sign. Probably won't get any of those guys just because of the price tag, but I think that they're
we're the Angels, and
we're the Angels, right? And then the argument would be like, well, why not just get Carlos Estevez if you're going to go and get one of those guys? So I get that, John. There's a name out there right now that you wanted, and somebody that I think would be a benefit not just in the bullpen but also as a swing starter potentially, right?
Yeah, I'll start with him. It's Jacob Eunice.
Yeah,
great for the Brewers and the Reds last year, and he can be a starter or a reliever and even give you a couple innings at a time if you need it. And then Spencer Turnbull, who is sleeping on Spencer Turnbull. The Angels are in the perfect position to add Spencer Turnbull to the rotation, Mike. I would say put him in the dang rotation. I know he wasn't healthy all season last year. I think he had about 43 innings worth of throws out there. And so what I'm trying to say, though, is so what? Sign him for a cheap deal. Give him a prove-it deal. And if he's good and you need to trade him by the deadline, do that. If he gets hurt, so what? You've got depth. You've got lots of arms you can go to.
Yeah.
I don't see why anybody is sleeping on Spencer Turnbull right now, especially the Angels, because they're in the perfect position to add him to their rotation. He was fantastic in the games that he got into last year. Again, I know he's hurt, but you can hit the eject button on him. It's not that big of a deal. That's the kind of move that I would make. And again, going back to Jacob Eunice, why is he still out there? What do we do? What are these GMs doing, man? Can we finally get let's get one of those new teams, the expansion teams, and we'll all pool our money together. And Mike and I will be the GMs. And we'll be the best team in MLB. That's what we're going to do.
The locked on boys. Well, that we'll call it the baseball boys, right?
That's right.
John, Kyle Finnegan is still out there.
Yeah.
And that's somebody that I thought was, first of all, he got non-tendered by the Nationals and he didn't have a bad year last year, 38 saves. His win-loss record was not great, so he wasn't great in some of those holding moments. But, John, he could be somebody the Angels could pick up. And I don't think that if they signed him, it would necessarily mean that Joyce isn't closing. I think that they actually could bring him in and be maybe a back-end type of guy, but still have Ben Joyce close and then perhaps have him take over, kind of like what they were going to do with Lopez and Estevez when they were on the same roster, right? Like they were going to have them kind of switch off back and forth. If Estevez has gone, 2 games, you can bring in Lopez to figure it out, right? I think with Finnegan, you can do the same thing with Joyce, especially if he's still learning how to pitch back-to-back days.
Kyle Finnegan is a much better 8th inning guy.
Yeah.
And I know the 38 saves look great on paper, but he is not built to be a closing pitcher. And I think that, like you said, the record's not great because of all of the, the lack of holds in those opportunities. Actually, I picked him up in fantasy. Nobody had him. And then I racked up all those saves because, that's like the hardest thing to get in freaking fantasy baseball. But I picked him up and I was just like, all right, the Nationals closer, I'll take him. Well, I didn't realize that he probably is a better setup guy, Mike. And so I'm with you. I don't necessarily think that it means Joyce isn't closing. You could go to him if you wanted to, like you suggested. And you might even, again, have somebody with like a high velo like Quijada come in. I know that he needs, again, work on another pitch in his repertoire and also be able to locate the fastball. But I say all that because there's so many guys on this list. And yeah, you mentioned there's going to be some costly ones, Jansen, Kimbrel, maybe Andrew Chafin. But there are so many guys like Spencer Turnbull and Kyle Finnegan. Feels like no harm, no foul. And if you want to get better, the bullpen is kind of your only option at this point because you're not going to go out and get an Alex Bregman for your infield. Sounds like they're not doing Pete Alonso. There's no really good starting pitchers left. So pick up some good arms that you can trust. Get your Michael Wacha's and your Seth Lugos like the Royals did last year and see what happens. And if worse comes to worse, so what? You've got plenty of pitching depth to go to. So I'll say it again. Turnbull, Eunice, even Finnegan. Go out and grab a couple of arms and just reinforce the bullpen so that you don't have to put a lot of pressure on some of the guys that you don't have to trust. And then maybe you don't have to run Jose Suarez out for a month. Like I suggested, you can just make room for one of these guys and have him take their spot. So for me, it seems so easy. It seems like such a simple, easy decision to go after one of these guys.
Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB. You can find that show on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hey, give us a follow at Locked On Angels on Twitter, at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. Again, whether you're watching or listening, come on over to YouTube, find today's show, hit that subscribe button. We want 10K by opening day, and get in the comment section. We want to hear from you. Mike, I'm so excited for Friday because everybody was so happy about the Talking Halos episode. We're going to meet with Chuck and Jeff from Angels Win, aren't we?
Yeah, we sent a message, said, hey, come on the show. And they said, hey, we're going to do that. So I'm excited to have them on the show. We'll do another roundtable, good conversation about the Angels. And they've been Angel fans for a long time, longer than you and I have. And we've been Angel fans for a long time. So we're going to share some history, and then we're going to gripe a little bit. And then I think we're going to try to help them to be positive, and they might help us to be a bit pessimistic. It's going to be a whole lot of fun on Friday on Locked On Angels.
All right, looking forward to that, and we hope you'll come back and join us for that. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here, everybody, and we'll see you back here on Friday.
It's going to be good.
Good.
Going to be good.
It's going to be good.